It's fine. It's a belief system. He's allowed to believe it, and people are allowed to vote for it. But if liberals deny it, like he's just going through a goth phase, they're going to lose more elections. This is not a communist country. It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening. Zoran can't make your wishes come true. You're thinking of Zoltar.
It's finally happening. Bill Maher is laying out what he believes is the real reason the Democratic Party's strategy keeps collapsing. Amid the ongoing ICE controversy, many expected the DNC's image to improve. Instead, polling and public perception appear to be sliding. People are asking why. Maher claims he knows the answer and says it may surprise you. So if you're here for bold, unfiltered political commentary, let's dive straight into it.
Now, let me tell you about the story that liberal algorithms locked out. Her name is Sia Weaver, and if you ask anyone in the blue sky bubble who that is, they'll look at you like a turkey looking up at the rain. But she's kind of important in New York, being Major Mamdani's chief of the Office to Protect Tenants, and since Mamdani's big issue is the rent's too damn high, yes, he stole this guy's act. It's a very key appointment in the most important city in the country, which is also our financial center. It matters that the mayor stands by, and so I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private property, it's over. Seize private property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more communists.
Ma begins by focusing on what he describes as the DNC's drift toward the far left. He argues this goes beyond campaign rhetoric and into messaging that some voters interpret as leaning toward socialism. Critics counter that figures like Zoran Mamdani don't represent the entire Democratic Party, and that it's unfair to generalize based on one outspoken politician. But Maher says that misses the broader issue. He points to New York City, not just another municipality, but a global symbol of American capitalism and economic power. What happens there shapes national perception. If voters begin to associate major Democratic strongholds with socialist branding, Ma warns that the ripple effect could reshape how the entire party is viewed nationwide.
Private property, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy. Really? Even among the 20 million black Americans who own their own home? I mean, these are the kind of utterances I might forgive as something a dumb white girl said while she was at Bryn Mawr. Because it's the kind of privilege hating you can only learn for $95,000 a year. But these are statements made as an adult. Yes, for co-eds from elite private colleges, you're only a lesbian until graduation, but the communism lasts a lifetime.
Ma argues that Democratic strategy is faltering for a politically sensitive reason. Many Americans react strongly to anything that sounds like communism. For a significant portion of voters, the label carries historical weight. Images of government overreach, economic stagnation, and restricted freedoms. Whether those fears are exaggerated or not, Ma contends they are politically real. He notes that American identity has long been shaped in opposition to centralized economic control, especially during the Cold War era. So when political rhetoric echoes those themes, even loosely, it can trigger anxiety. Dismissing those concerns outright, he argues, only widens the divide.
Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Mayor Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. How do I know this? Well, I'm reading between the lines when one of his major advisors says, elect more communists.
Ma insists that openly socialist branding by high-profile Democrats damages the broader party image. In his view, perception often outweighs nuance. When one prominent figure embraces policies labeled socialist, opponents can frame the entire party that way. Once that narrative sticks, reversing it becomes difficult. He also notes that even younger voters, often assumed to be uniformly progressive, are economically pragmatic. Concerns about inflation, job growth, and long-term opportunity still matter. If policies appear economically risky, support can soften quickly.
Fine, it's a belief system. He's allowed to believe it, and people are allowed to vote for it. But if liberals deny it, like he's just going through a goth phase, they're going to lose more elections. This is not a communist country.
Ma has made similar arguments on Real Time, where he warned that labeling matters politically. Polling data has shown that while Democratic voters may view socialism more favorably than in past decades, most Americans overall still express stronger support for capitalism than socialism. For Republicans especially, the term socialism carries heavy negative weight. Ma argues that if Democratic leaders fail to push back against extreme branding, it could create long-term electoral consequences, potentially even affecting future presidential cycles.
Turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening. Zoran can't make your wishes come true. You're thinking of Zoltar.
Ma references Venezuela as a cautionary tale when discussing aggressive state intervention in the economy. Once one of Latin America's wealthiest nations, Venezuela has faced severe economic contraction, inflation, and declining living standards. By contrast, the U.S. economy, with a GDP in the tens of trillions, remains diversified and globally influential. Ma's point isn't that America is on the brink of collapse, but that dramatic structural shifts can carry serious risks. Economic perception, he argues, matters as much as economic reality in politics.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet.
He also questions whether the Democratic Party has done enough to distance itself from rhetoric that leans heavily into democratic socialism. Figures like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez operate within the Democratic coalition, but Ma suggests their messaging sometimes stretches beyond mainstream party principles. He argues that silence from party leadership can be interpreted as tacit approval, and in politics, perception can be powerful.
I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism. But the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more.
At the same time, Ma acknowledges that the U.S. system already blends capitalism with social programs, public schools, Social Security, Medicare, infrastructure spending. His argument isn't against every government-funded initiative. It's about scale and balance. He suggests there's a difference between maintaining social safety nets and restructuring the economic system entirely. In theory, socialism promises fairness and security. In practice, Ma argues incentives, efficiency, and bureaucracy complicate implementation. Structural change can carry unintended consequences.
Petrified of COVID, masking 2-year-olds who never would have died from it and keeping schools closed for far too long. They're definitely afraid of their kids, who from time immemorial have always come up with bad ideas. Their kids. Thinking up stupid shit is what they do. But parents used to tell them, that's ridiculous. The world doesn't work that way. Not today's parents. They say, you're right, honey. Gender is just a social construct. Please, sometimes your mother and I forget which one of us has.
Ma ultimately circles back to messaging. He believes the Democratic Party's earlier focus on cultural and identity battles alienated some centrist voters. Instead of recalibrating toward the middle, he sees signs that some factions are moving further left. He warns that doubling down on ideological edges may narrow the coalition rather than expand it. Elections, he argues, are typically won in the center. If party leadership misreads public sentiment and interprets past losses as a call for greater ideological intensity instead of pragmatism, the same mistakes could repeat.
I don't know if we're still banning TikTok. That was before we changed the rule in America to Trump decides what's a law. But I know it wouldn't even be an issue if parents would sack up and tell their kids to get off the phone. Democrats are still afraid of the mean girls who police their far-out fringe. Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton had a perfect score on LGBTQ issues from the Human Rights Campaign. But when he said, I have 2 little girls, I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete, his own campaign manager quit.
In the end, Ma's argument centers on one theme: perception shapes political reality. He believes the Democratic Party risks embracing labels that make moderate voters uncomfortable. Whether through progressive cultural politics, the rise of democratic socialist voices, or reluctance to distance itself from controversial rhetoric, he sees branding challenges ahead. His broader concern isn't opposition to reform, it's political viability. America has historically balanced social programs with a strong capitalist framework. When voters feel that balance tipping too far, they react. Ma's closing message is straightforward: adapt to the electorate or risk learning the same painful lessons again at the ballot box. And that wraps up today's breakdown. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe for more political analysis and commentary.